Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. The unofficial Sons of Sanguinius week rolls on, and today, you never underestimate the Blood Angels. The events we are discussing today are old school, a piece of fluff from the 2nd edition Angels of Death Codex. And guys, if you've got your old codexes laying around somewhere, what better time than these lockdowns than diving into some old school awesomeness. And for those of you that don't, you can always find an old edition codex on eBay for pretty cheap. Or even if you've got the latest ones, dive in, there is always quality content to be had. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now this story is short, but when I read it, it just made me smile. It's just a one-page piece of fluff from the codex, and it takes place on a world named Kursk II, where traitor rebels have seized control of a command center. The Mordian Guard forces dispatched to eradicate the rebels, despite having the superior numbers, simply can't get close enough to remove them, each assault having left more and more guardsmen laying dead or wounded on the expanse in front of the rebels' position. No matter what they try, they simply cannot get the rebels out of there. And so they've called for the Blood Angels. But only 5 have arrived. An assault squad combat squad, led by an unnamed Blood Angels captain. And he demands a brief from the exasperated Mordian sergeant, who quickly fills him in on the situation. The Space Marine could not fail to see the truth of the guardsman's report, for the bodies of several Mordians lay unmoving in the dust between the makeshift barricade and the ruins of the command centre. Although Lord Varlak's rebellion on Kursk II had been suppressed, pockets of resistance from these loyal to the rogue Psyker still held out against the Imperial forces across the planet. Most had been crushed, but here the rebels' position was simply too strong, and so the Blood Angels had been called in. "You may need to call for more men, sir," said Mordax, looking at the small group of Blood Angels. The Space Marine captain pulled himself to his full height and glowered at the guardsman. "You insult us, Mordian," he growled. "I will have words with you after we have dealt with the rebels." Now, I'm not sure if the Mordian's got balls of solid rock or is just plain stupid. He's quite clearly never interacted with the Adeptus Astartes before, let alone the Blood Angels. You've got to admire his cojones either way in telling a Blood Angels captain he's going to need more men. Because I'm not sure I'd want a Blood Angel coming to have words with me after the battle. But with that, the captain wastes no time, the assault squad of Blood Angels hurtling skywards with a thunder of their jetpacks. Straight to the rebels' position. Fortified or not, the Blood Angels just career straight through the wall and into the heart of the enemy. Yelling a battle cry, Mordax led his Imperial Guardsmen forward into the fray. But the cry died on his lips when he came to the gap in the wall and he saw the scene within. Although there were only 5 Space Marines compared to at least 6 times as many rebels, the barely contained animalistic fury of the Blood Angels made up for their comparative lack of numbers. Broken bodies lay scattered among the ruins, not just cut down by gunfire, but butchered in ways that the guardsmen would only have expected from an alien horror such as the Tyranids. Here a rebel killed by a gunshot to the stomach had his heart torn clean out of his chest. There the corpse of another man testified to the fact that, while still alive, his head had been ripped from his body, taking half his spinal column with it. That such destruction could have been caused in so short a period of time seemed almost impossible. Frozen with horror, The Mordians looked on as the Emperor's elite went on with their slaughter. The bloodlust was on the Space Marines now, and nothing would stop them purging Kursk of the rebels. Only half the defenders remained. The myths of the power of the Space Marines must be quite something to the ordinary men of the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, but actually seeing them in action for the first time, you can only imagine would be a combination of awe-inspiring and absolute fear. Reaching that hole in the wall and seeing a Blood Angels assault squad in action, in a confined space, at the height of their fury, is it any wonder the Mordians are stopped dead in their tracks? It must literally be a scene like a nightmare. In moments it was all over, and all that was left a scene of devastation and carnage. Mordax waited uneasily in the deathly silence that followed the battle, as the Blood Angels captain strode towards him over the corpses of Varlak's troops. It required all of the guardsmen's willpower not to cower before the 7-foot-tall warrior that was approaching him. He could imagine the captain's eyes, burning with barely suppressed bloodlust behind the visors of his helmet. The urge to kill was upon him. The Blood Angel halted and leant forward, his visor mere inches from the guardsman's face. There was a moment of tense silence as the Mordian dared not imagine what might happen next. A sound like a low growl emerged from the Space Marine's helmet. "Praise be to the Emperor," he suddenly roared, and then, turning on his heels, marched away with the squad across the churned-up battlefield. Praise be to the Emperor indeed, Mordax thought, with an unrestrained sigh of relief. Oh man, what a great little story. You can literally hear the force of will in the Blood Angel as he fights down his rage and anger with that praise be to the Emperor. And the Mordian just absolutely bricking it as he stomps towards him. How close the Blood Angel's captain probably was to just ripping the guy's head off. I just love these small interactions we get between the Space Marines and the normal guardsmen. Both loyal forces of the Imperium, but just complete worlds apart. You have to imagine just standing there frozen, watching the carnage unfolding. The Mordians must feel as akin to them as Xenos, as a band of orcs, comparing the devastation to Tyranids. But then, the universal bond no matter who or what you are within the Imperium. No, not their humanity. The Emperor. Ah man, what a scene. Just old school goodness. But as always guys, what did you think of it? Was the Mordian right to expect more men? You have to imagine that this guy was fairly new on the job. And do you think there could be a sight worse than seeing a Blood Angels assault squad in action for your first sighting of Adeptus Astartes? What other chapters do you think could rank above them? As always, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. A huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support really means a lot to me. It truly does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.